Welcome back. I'm here today with Ray Rothrock. Ray is a venture capitalist here in Silicon Valley and has welcome to today's show.
Thank you. Good.
So, Ray, can you give me your background of how many years you've been in the venture capital industry? And
Sure. I joined Venrock in 1988 in New York City. So I've been in the industry coming on 26 years here. Started out when the industry was not about the internet and consumer or anything. It was a very much different era. Prior to that, I was at Sun Microsystems in the Valley. So I've had actually 2 tours of duty here in the Valley. One, 81, when I moved out here as an entrepreneur and was with 2 failed companies and got on with Sun. I learned about VC and then went to New York with Venrock. And before that, I was a nuclear engineer at a power plant in Massachusetts back during the 70s.
So you were with, what year did you join Sun?
84. It would have been early 84.
And so you were there right when they were going IPO? Or
2 years before. They went public in 86. So I was in the hundreds was my number. We were all in 2 buildings, and but we were growing fast. It was fun. I think we were shipping 50 or 60 units a month. It was very exciting.
Oh, wow. So, I guess going back to Sun, they really were a company that they had responsible for kind of putting infrastructure in place for the internet, or
totally. In fact, it's not often talked about, but for those of us who were there, TCP/IP, which is the protocol of the internet, really was commercialized by Sun and put out in a big way throughout the industry. Microsoft sort of adopted TCP/IP, but changed it a little bit, but ultimately they had to give up. And of course, 3Com with their NIC cards immobilized the entire PC industry to be TCP/IP. So TCP/IP was standardized by Sun, and really, that is the connectivity of it all.
And what role were you playing at the?
It was my first job, not as an engineer. I joined what was called the Catalyst program, which was an evangelism program. So my mission was to go out and convince engineering software companies to put their software on the Sun platform so that the sales force could then take the Sun platform into other companies. In that era, there were about 9 or 10 workstation companies. We used to call it just another workstation company, JAWS. And there was a bunch of them. And it was a highly competitive business, and Apollo was the big gorilla, and we were the up-and-comer. But there was Jupiter and Saturn and Multiflow and all kinds of companies. So that was my job.
Yeah, and I noticed in your background that you were also an Eagle Scout. How did that help to prepare you for your life career?
That's a good question. Being an Eagle Scout, Eagle Scout is a path. It is you have to sort of have a plan. A little bit of it's laid out in front of you, but you have to execute. You have to have a plan, have a goal, set some deadlines, assemble resources, and get things done. And it's fun. If you like to build things like I do, and you like to do things like many people do, having a plan is really good. And the Eagle Scout really just sort of put one foot in front of the other. And then, of course, the variety of things you do, from the citizenship merit badges, so you get all that, to the cooking merit badge, to the camping merit, and then all the other things. In fact, it was the nuclear energy merit badge that I got when I was 15 or so that led me on my college career of becoming a nuclear engineer.
A great program.
Yeah.
Great program.
Great program.
Now, Ray, you spent 26 years at Venrock.
Yeah.
Of all the years at Venrock and the companies that you helped to create, which one are you the most proud of?
Well, I did 53 investments. I led 53 deals at Venrock. So that's that's about 2 a year if you do the math. The one I'm most proud of course, is the most successful and the long-lived company, and that's called Checkpoint Software Technologies out of Tel Aviv, Israel. I like to measure venture capital success is not by so much the IRR, although that's important, but when you create a company, it grows and lives forever. That's how General Motors came about. That's how Ford came about. All these great companies that we just assume are in our fabric, they started with 1 or 2 people. So when you meet a company like Checkpoint, which was 3 people, 3 guys working in one of the founders' grandparents' home in Tel Aviv with a cool little software product to protect people on the internet, you get involved with those guys, you help them grow their company, you help them raise more money, you bring them to the United States, and you expand all that. And then it turns out to be a $12 billion company with $1.5 billion revenues, global company of 5,000 people. That's pretty exciting. That's something to be proud of.
something fun to see and look
Oh,
back to say I was there. And
Yeah, I was there
helped
for
it.
I've been there for 20 years, so it's been good.
I'm visiting here today with Ray Rothrock. Ray is a venture capitalist here in Silicon Valley. Spent several years with Venrock Capital, and we're visiting today with the state of the industry here in Silicon Valley. Ray, we need to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
As long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan. Welcome back. I'm here today with Ray Rothrock. Ray's a venture capitalist here in Silicon Valley, has spent 26 years with Venrock, and then recently ventured off and to he's independent now. But Ray, we're talking about venture capital, and you've done some 53 investment companies over the years. What makes a good entrepreneur?
Well, I think that's a little bit. You can always tell retrospectively, but I would say up front, passion, a real passion to change things. Entrepreneurs who exhibit that passion, there's a bunch of other attributes that come with it. One is focus. You can be passionate, but if you're not focused, you're not going to put one foot in front of the other and get started. Second, you have to have, I think, a really unusual sense of risk. When I was at Sun, I worked for Vinod Khosla on a couple of projects, and I learned a lot from Vinod, and he definitely is one of my mentors from those early days when I was just learning about the Silicon Valley. But he just simply had no appreciation of risk. He didn't care. A good entrepreneur doesn't care. They see a problem, they see where the puck is going, to use that old cliche, and they just go there. And they can bust through walls, they can climb mountains, they can do whatever it takes. The other thing I think that makes a good no entrepreneur is going to become a great entrepreneur without a great team, and so they have to have the ability to attract great people and keep great people on their team. And the management is one thing, but entrepreneurial management is another, because you have to give people the spark. You have to convince them of the passion, because you're going to do hard things. You're most likely going to fail, but you got to keep people engaged, and you got to keep pushing forward. And that you sometimes can see that in the first 3 or 4 minutes of an interview with somebody. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 hours or 3 or 4 visits with them to really get it. And then when you meet the other team members, you can really see if that exists. It almost doesn't matter what they're doing. It's this mixture of passion, focus, and the ability to surround themselves with a great team. That's what really makes a great entrepreneur.
So when you're working with companies and someone comes to you and says, Ray, we want you to join us and to engage in our vision, what makes the difference between people that you decide to work with and those that you don't?
Oh, that's a good question. It's sort of the vision thing. Again, another cliche. When I started out at Venrock, I worked on the 56th floor at 30 Rock. And it used to be a joke. Everyone's heard the joke of the elevator pitch, right? Well, it's a true story. So imagine you're coming up to see Venrock to make a pitch to me or my partners in those days. You step on the elevator and David Rockefeller is standing there in the elevator, or Lawrence Rockefeller in those days. Those were our funders originally. Mm-hmm. You have exactly 55 seconds to introduce yourself, greet Mr. Rockefeller, and then tell him what it is you're going to do. So one of the things that separates an entrepreneur I'll work with from one I can't is if they can get right to the point, right to the business, and lay it out crystal clear for me. I hate it when an entrepreneur says, I just got to show you the product in order for you to understand it. No. Like your mother used to say, use your words, write them down. If you can get that out clearly and concisely, then you're well on your way to convincing other people, because if you can't we're using words right now, right? And gestures. That's the way entrepreneurs have to convey their visions. And if you can't do that, then I'm not going to back you. And again, it really doesn't matter a lot about the area. It's about, do you have the passion, the conviction? Obviously, you got to be curing a real problem and solving pain and all that. But really, it's this division between leadership and attractiveness, and then just sort of being blasé or say, well, I can't really, it's this sort of hedging stuff. That doesn't sound like a great answer, but it's really a pretty quick division, pretty fast.
I'm visiting here today with Ray Rothrock. Ray spent 26 years with Venrock Capital and recently went out on his own as a venture capitalist. We're talking about the state of the valley today, and Ray, we need to take a quick break.
Sure.
We'll be back after this message. I want to talk about pitching to VCs, what works and what doesn't.
Okay.
He's the world's most trustworthy man. Tax filing deadlines are scheduled around his vacation calendar. The IRS agent who audited his client apologized.
I don't always advise people on their taxes, but when I do, I save them every penny legally possible.
GrowCo CPAs and Advisors.
Come to GrowCo and stay wealthy, my friend.
Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Ray Rothrock. Ray's a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. Spent 26 years in the industry with the firm Venrock. And Ray, I understand that you're also on the Midas List of Forbes.
I've been there, yep.
And basically the Midas List is outlining some of the best venture capitalists in the world who have tremendous success rates. In fact, I heard it quoted that your IRR is somewhere 94% or...
Yep, it's in that zone, I think, yep.
Very impressive.
I don't do those calculations.
So let's go back to a person that's coming to pitch their company before you as a VC. What do you look for in that pitch?
Well, we've talked a little bit about passion, so I'll go to the next piece. It's IQ and relevance. When you get your 45 minutes in front of a partner or a group of partners, you really need to come very prepared and very able to convince them quickly that you're going to tell them about something that's important, that you're the one that knows that it's important, and you have this domain expertise, if you will, about it. And I don't like mystery stories. I like to know what's going to happen right away. I'm here to raise money from you, Mr. Rothrock. I'm going to ask you at the end of this pitch, for the next steps in order to take that. But here, let me tell you about the pain. Let me give you the backstory, I call it, the backdrop of why that pain exists, and then here's the solution. And you get all that out in the first 5 or 10 minutes, and now you've got me. And I'll stick around to hear about the market and the product definition and the financial plans and all that sort of stuff. But if you can't hook me in the first 5 or 10 minutes, and I think that's just true. When people start flipping out their BlackBerries or whatever, that's a bad sign. And it's very obvious when you've missed the mark. So that's what I really look for. The other thing, because due diligence is an ongoing part, even after you put the money in, you continue to do due diligence on people. Mm-hmm. One of the things I look for is the old, again, something you learned in kindergarten. You're known by the company you keep. So I'm going to be looking for what are your connections to credible institutions or other credible people? Anything to give you a little leg up. At the end of the day, startups are hard, so you want to have an unfair advantage in the field of play. And so if you've got, locally here, Stanford would be a natural place to come. But there are plenty of other great institutions that you may have a relationship to. If you worked at Sun Microsystems or at Hewlett-Packard, these are companies that were successful and you had meaningful roles. All that contributes to the credibility of the story that you're laying out. So I'm looking for the company that you've kept, the path that you've taken. Failures are okay if you learn from them, but successes, of course, are always good too. So those are sort of some of the early key things I look for.
Well, we've been talking about venture capital, and in recent years, angel investing has become even more prevalent. Let's go into this page about the angel investor versus the venture capitalist.
Right.
What's the difference between the angel investor?
It's that's easy. So just a sidebar to give you some stats. So when I was chair of the National Venture Capital Association 2 years ago, we went out and surveyed the industry. There are about 20,000 startups funded each year in the United States. That's a big number, and that's mostly with angel financing. Professionally invested Series A's, that's after the angel investing, there are only about 1 to 2,000. And that number doesn't change much, by the way, from year to year. It doesn't matter if there's $50 billion in the business or $5 billion in the business. So angel investing is usually a pretty low threshold of due diligence. It's literally high risk capital. Most of it will fail. If you think about just the attrition rate from 20,000 to a couple of thousand, it's enormous. So an angel typically will not be expected to continue. They just simply gave the entrepreneur a little bit of cash to do whatever they had for things they needed cash on. They expect the entrepreneur to work for nothing really during that period of time and to use that money to acquire or hire or whatever it is. So you're not expected typically to go along. Sometimes even angels are bought out in that first professional round to keep the balance sheet, to keep the cap table simple for the company going on. There are, at least at my firm, we always brought every deal in, and if the firm said no, meaning it was too much risk or whatever, we could do the deal ourselves and then work the project, work with the entrepreneur, help with the strategy, do whatever's required. And then the fund would step in with the Series A and buy out me or the other partner, whoever it was. So we used angel investing both positively to seed ideas into our world of institutional investing, but we also acknowledged fully that it was a risk. There was no guarantee the firm would pick up my piece, and it's just the way it was. Angels tend to be, there's a lot of angels who've made a lot of money who think that they were responsible for making that money. There's an awful lot of luck involved. Did I create Sun Microsystems? No. Were we lucky? Yeah. But did we have a great product? Yeah. And I learned a lot from those guys. And so that little going public gave me that gave me an introduction to venture capital, which was tremendous. And I don't think I would be an angel investor today if I had not already been a VC. I just know there's too much luck involved and too much risk involved, unless I were a billionaire.
So what advice would you give to the budding entrepreneur with a great idea? Should they start with angel capital, maybe align themselves with a venture capital firm initially? What direction is best?
I'll tell you, when you get on the professional money, the venture capital train, there's a whole lot of expectations that come with it that sometimes aren't well understood. And so if you're still in a pretty raw mode, your product isn't quite finished, maybe you haven't even got a customer, you hadn't even tried to sell it yet, and you get on that VC, you've put out a plan, they're going to hold you to that. And if you don't meet the plan, there could be some bad things happen. And I will tell you, of the 350 deals at Venrock that I was around for, only 5 ever made plan out of 350. So that's pretty low odds that you're going to make it, right? Doesn't mean it doesn't going to turn out to be a great deal. We have plenty of great deals. But there's going to be bumps along the way. So sometimes angels can be very forgiving and very helpful. They'll introduce you to clients or customers or whatever. I think if you go to angels, you want to make sure that they have relationships up the chain, up the capital food chain. Because when I looked at an angel, just like, well, who are your angel investors? There's Frank Bonsall, who's a retired partner at NEA. Oh, Frank's got a reputation, a good nose. Again, it's the company you've kept. If you've just taken money from friends, family, and fools, that's a little different. That means you probably didn't try hard enough. You didn't really, getting in front of you or me as a VC and getting money as an angel, that you've crossed a barrier.
I'm visiting here today with Ray Rothrock. We've been talking about the state of venture capital and what makes a good VC investment coming in. Ray, we need to take a quick break. I want to, on this last segment, get into the future of the venture capital industry.
Okay.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Good.
With current laws, we have left our children an enormous financial burden. Even though they may be too young to understand it. At GrowCo, we care about you and the ones you love, and the quality of your and their lives. Call us today to see how we can help. 877-CPA-2006.
Helping you along the way.
Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Ray Rothrock. spent 26 years with Venrock Capital, and now is out on his own as an independent venture capitalist, Silicon Valley. And Ray, let's talk about the future. How do you invest in the future when you're an angel investor, venture capitalist? What do you look for?
Well, it's personal, I think, a lot. I look for really highly differentiated technology that will do something that's never been done before. Big data, analyzing that, analytics around everything going on the web, robotics is another area. I just invested personally in Planet Labs, which is put up microsatellites to take a picture of the Earth once a day and provide it to people that want that kind of information. These are new areas that technology, through Moore's Law, has been able to bring to market very cheaply. And so that's what I look for from a technological point of view. And then, of course, one of the things that I think is a very good thing that's happened in the last 10 years is that universities have really adopted an entrepreneurial program, particularly at the business schools. Of course, Stanford Business School is probably the granddaddy of them, but every business school, and I do a lot of talking, particularly when I was chair of the MVCA, everybody's got entrepreneurial programs. There was a time when it wasn't cool to be an entrepreneur. It was almost like, oh, you're going to be an entrepreneur, that means you can't get a real job. No longer is that the case. Now, to be an entrepreneur is the cool thing to do. And I actually coach over at Stanford. Peter Wendell runs a course over there, and it's the energy, the coolness, to be an entrepreneur. And this is true across the country, whether my home in Texas or Southern California or every school I've ever been to, entrepreneurship is cool. So we've got lots of invention still going on. In fact, we could talk about that for a while, but R&D in this country needs to go back up rather than down. We've made entrepreneurship cool. You put those two things together, put it in a pot and stew, and then throw in some capital with guys that, like me, who may know how to help them craft their strategies. I think we have a very bright future of amazing products. Right. My wife used to just say, when I come home excited about a project, she said, Ray, you got to see the future today. And I go, yep, you did. I did.
So we just have a few minutes left. So I want to talk about philanthropy.
Okay.
Why have you made that such a big part of your life this time?
Well, it's probably where I grew up. I'm right out of central casting, middle class. My dad was a World War II veteran, D-Day. My mom was a school teacher. We went to church, always giving back in the community. The Scouts was part of my culture growing up. And I had a mentor in college who said, now look, I was going to go to MIT and get a PhD. He said, look, you're going to go PhD MIT, make all that money. You got to be sure and give some of it back. Well, it kind of stuck. And because I love music and because I think there's not enough music education in the world, I went back to my alma mater and helped them kick off a whole music program, which didn't exist in 1999, if you can believe it, a major university without a music degree. And then locally, I've been very involved in my son's school and performing arts. I'm trustee of Theater Works. I think performing arts is really cool. I think it's very important for society. I hope we never forget it. I think some societies along the way did, and they got lost. So that's what it's.
So it sounds like a big part of the philanthropy is focused in the educational music and the arts program.
Right. The creative side of things.
How do you find balance in life?
By doing both. By being involved with very smart people doing interesting projects to change the future, and also very creative people on the music side. And I find great balance in that, and always something good to talk about at dinner.
So, Ray, if a person wanted to contact you, has a venture deal, or trying to get a hold of you, how would they go ahead about that?
Well, my email is rayrothrock@icloud.com, or you can just look me up on the web. I'm there.
Visiting here today with Ray Rothrock, venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. Ray, thank you for being on today's show.
Alan, thank you. Appreciate it.